All right, so for everybody who has just tuned in to tonight's episode of the Car Guy and Six Fan Show, just know that this little interlude is so that you can have the opportunity to watch an ad and help out my channel. So thank you very much for doing that. And also, we're really excited to kind of get this party started. And I hope that if you're coming over here from Anthony's channel tonight, that you've hit that subscribe button, that you've given a thumbs up on your way in the door, and it's time to get started with the Car Guy and Six Fan Show on this Thursday evening, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're, like I said before, we're excited to have Anthony as our guest. But before we do that, let's kind of go around the clock here and introduce everybody. My name is Jason. I'm the Car Guy of the Car Guy and Six Fan Show. And down below the screen here,
that makes me a straight six fan of this operation. I'm Grant Tommy, and happy to be in the co-host chair, but even more happier to have Anthony as our guest tonight. And before we kind of turn it over to Anthony to give his official introduction to the crowd, did want to just acknowledge the crowd real quick. Jason Roque, Grimm's Auto Service, Big Al's Bike and Auto, King Eric, the greatest of all, Everything's Broken Garage, Will's Wheels, and we had, let's see, Jeff Patriot, Christopher Kraft, and we had, I think even Anthony's dad's joining us tonight. So Dumb Broke Garage, we had, over 20 people waiting for us to get going. So thank you everybody for popping in. But yes, Anthony, why don't you give us a quick little bio and tell the crowd who you are?
So my name's Anthony Gozzo, and I'm up here in Pelham, New Hampshire. I run my own dealership, kind of a specialty dealership, I guess where the name came from, Specialty Motor Cars. I have a YouTube channel. It's under my name, or Specialty, and I advertise all my cars there, basically dealing with, as I tell people, anything your grandmother would have driven in the 90s. Big mom-pop cars, Cadillacs, Lincolns, Buicks, stuff like that. It's what I like, and it's what I like to sell. And I enjoy doing it because I can really connect with my audience on them. And it's been quite successful so far.
And we've got our first super sticker coming in from Jeff Patriot. Thank you, Jeff, for that $3 donation. It's donations like that help keep our channels and our projects going. We really appreciate that. Anthony, I want to jump right in and just kind of come up and say, why big cars? Why Cadillacs? Why Lincolns?
Well, I mean, I'm a 90s, baby. Born in 88, so the era of cars that I deal with or I like, just like everybody, is what you had as a kid, what your parents had, what your grandparents had. Oddly enough, though, none of my grandparents, none of my parents had Cadillacs or Lincolns, really. My father bought a Lincoln under my influence when I was in high school, and I bought him his very first Cadillac. But what drew me to these cars, I don't know. I remember riding in the back seat of my grandmother's 88 or an 89 Caprice Classic LS Brougham, and I just remember that feeling of, velour seats and, 4 ashtrays to stick bubble gum wrappers in and stuff like that. And I just really enjoyed that. And, I don't know how I really zoned in on these Cadillacs other than, just seeing them out there on the road and just thinking how elegant they were. And really, I don't know where all the time has gone, because I still look at these cars as like modern day cars. But now I make a living out of buying them, selling them, collecting them. And like I said, I meet a lot of nice people along the way doing it, which keeps me going. It's really great.
For some reason, I think that we have a frozen Grant down below, but we're going to carry on, I guess. Maybe he can figure out what's going on there before we get to so he can ask a question. Sure. As we talked before we went live, is that you and I have a lot in common. We are both used car dealers, and of course, you specialize in the luxury market as far as the older Cadillacs and Lincolns, and you've had some Grand Marquis and other things in there as well. How is it that you find a specialty market benefits you business wise? Like, is there, like, is narrowing down your niche so far, like, has that worked for you?
It has, and I can attest to that, because prior to me going out on my own and being my own entity here, I worked for an independent used car dealer for 15 years. That's kind of where I started. I started in high school. I started as a recon kid, lot boy, worked my way up. And when I left there just 2 years ago, I was running the place. I was buying all their inventory. And just liking what I liked, I would also sneak in a town car or a Cadillac DTS or a Grand Marquis. When those were more relevant, I had 3 or 4 of them always on the lot, and those were the easiest cars to sell. And I'm a stickler for miles. The lower, the better. And I know people get weirded out by, if it has too low miles, what's going to go wrong. But today's cars, I think, are built better. That mileage being that low isn't really that big of a deal. But I saw, in comparing selling a 2010 DTS with 40,000 miles to selling a 2010 Camry, I sold the DTS quicker. There was more of a market, maybe I should say there was more of a gross and profit, because you could buy them right and you could sell them. It was kind of a seller's market, really, for what I was dealing with, because there wasn't a lot of that product out there. And that's kind of why I stick to these cars, is because, anybody can go anywhere and buy a 5 or 6 year old car, Camry, a Malibu, whatever it is. To my left, this red car here, it's a 1990 Brougham. It's got 20,000 miles, top of the line, top trimmed car. Like I say to people, go find another one. And when you can say that and not come off condescending, really that's what it is. You can almost make your market on that car. And, I try to keep in line with, the marketability of cars, but there's not as much competition out there. And it makes it for a lot easier of a sell and more pleasurable. I don't have people coming in here saying, well, Kelly Blue Book says this, or, the guy down the street has one for $2,500 less, because that's what I dealt with before. And it just, you put so much effort into buying cars, whether it's this or a Camry, all that effort, and then someone coming in and banging it down saying, hey, the guy down the street selling one for $1,000 less. Well, I don't know the guy down the street. I don't know if he put new tires on it. I don't know if his is a one owner. I know what my car is, but it was brutal. Like the car business changed so much when the internet happened, for the better in my case, but for the worse in regular used car sales. Because the consumer essentially comes in knowing more than you about your own product. And so that's kind of why I like dealing with what I deal with. And like I said in the beginning, I collect these cars, so I know these cars inside and out. So when I get a phone call from someone on whatever it is, and they can read my love through the phone, they can sense how much I know and how much I care. It makes it for, I don't want to say slam dunk, but it's a done deal. They're not buying it from a used car dealer. They're buying it from a fellow collector, and someone who's appreciating what they're selling.
Well, we'll get into this probably a little bit later when we talk more specifically about the YouTube side of things. But, you kind of mentioned there, Anthony, that you've niched down and found your market. You found the kind of a microcosm within the used car market. And so that's, I think, something that definitely translates forward when it comes to YouTube. And like I said, we'll talk about that later. But again, Jason's putting down below Big L's Bike and Auto, along with, earlier Jeff Patriot giving us some super chats. Just make note that I want the fans to know that we do keep track of all the super chats throughout the season. And there's, we do acknowledge that. So we wanted to say huge thanks. Anthony, I guess what I wanted to get towards, it was kind of a spinoff of Jason's earlier question about why big bodied cars. And normally we don't start doing chat questions until the end, but Scott earlier had asked, because this was one that I had kind of thought of too. If any, like, I know you said you're kind of like focused on 90s cars that your grandma would drive. You grew up in the 90s. It was like I was born in 85, you were born in 88. But I'm a sucker for those big body cars, especially, you know, kind of like through the style our buddy Adam over at Mob Steel or Detroit Steel Wheels. He likes to find mid 70s just land yachts, bag them, steel wheels. Do you feel like you could extend your sort of niche market a little further outside of the 90s, or is it really locked in on this era?
I could, and I mean, I get a lot of requests for that. You know, I appreciate a lot of other cars. I've had 70s cars. I mean, I have myself a 57 Chevy. I have a 59 Cadillac. So I can appreciate that era. You know, I guess I just haven't got to that point where I've expanded maybe the bankroll. But what I really think that these cars are good for is, as the generations have changed, you know, your 50s cars, your 40s cars are starting to fall off. The values are coming down. The cars that are taking off right now, you go on, you know, Bring a Trailer, you go on Cars and Bids and all those places. The cars that are taking off are these 80s and 90s cars because guys like us can afford them. They can buy their dream car, the car that they didn't have in high school or the car they had in college, and kind of relive those memories. And, you know, I saw someone made a comment before. It's an emotional purchase. And to buy a 1996 Buick Roadmaster station wagon because your mother had one when you were growing up, that emotional purchase, you know, isn't looked at as a used car. It's looked at as a investment. It's a collector car. So I guess I might have blinders on to anything else but this generation. I do appreciate older cars. I appreciate how much work goes into them. You know, but this is my era. I know if it was my father, you know, he'd be selling his 50s and 60s cars. That's why I have a 57 Chevy, because of my father. But my era was always this stuff. And I'm sure you guys can remember back when you were in high school what your first car was, or what was in the parking lot, you know, that, hey, you know, the kid on the football team had a Chevy IROC Camaro. You know, that kind of stuff is what you always want to go back to. So I guess I probably do have my blinders on someday, maybe, but I'm a little guy in a little shop. Big Al over here. my buddy Big Al, I'll throw a quick blurb in there. He's kind of like me. He's a collector, sells cars, but he loves front-wheel drive stuff. So we kind of butt heads every now and again, front-wheel drive versus rear-wheel drive.
One of the big things first of all, before I go into any more questions, guys, you're rocking it. We're at 85 people watching. I think our record for the show is like 91 or 94. I can't remember. I can never remember what it is, but we're getting close to that. And I think a lot of this is a lot of Anthony's compadres coming over here and, you know, shooting up the chat a little bit and having some fun. So thank you so much for coming in and being a part of the show. One of the things that Grant and I have always kind of taken pride with ourselves as well as our channels is kind of coining the phrase odd bodies. Grant's got a Fairmont. I've got a Cordoba from the 70s. And these are just not highly sought after cars that people are just dying to go out and buy. Maybe more so today for the Fox body that Grant has, the Fairmonts, because of their relationship to the Mustang. But nevertheless, odd body cars. And I would classify myself, like the Cadillac Fleetwoods and the Lincoln that you got behind you, I would classify those as odd simply because there's a very small niche out there looking for these cars.
Sure. And
there's a very small niche of people who appreciate these cars. I'm one of them. And again, we talked before we went live that, you know, it started off with an 04 Grand Marquis for me that we've called Grandma. And there's a lot of videos on my channel regarding Grandma. And then there was Blackjack, who we put a 3-inch lift and 31-inch tires on and made this thing a killing machine. So one of the big things that we always want to talk about is, you know, that particular niche. Yeah, it's small, and maybe that's why our channels are so small, because we focus on such an odd you know, area in the car market. But nevertheless, when you look outside of the cars that you're buying, do you see other niches that maybe somebody else is specializing in that's working for them?
Definitely. I I have a friend of mine, two friends of mine. I mean, Big Al, like I mentioned, and I have another friend in Pennsylvania who deals with front wheel drive stuff. And going back to what you described as, that odd market, what'd you say, odd market?
Odd body.
Odd body. I had a Cadillac Cimarron a few years ago that I couldn't give away. I hated the car. I mean, coming out of one of these, driving a Chevy Cavalier with Cadillac emblems. But now, again, you go and you look at some of these odd cars that back then weren't collectible. Your Cavaliers, your Lumina Z34s or Z24s. I don't even know the packages they came with, but those cars are becoming oddly collectible. So I do have other friends that deal in that stuff. It's just how that car connects with somebody is the big thing. I stand with what I stand with, but I get sometimes oddball stuff. Like I said, I had a Camaro just a few weeks ago, a Z28 Camaro 30th anniversary. Not what I normally would sell, but it was a 22 or 24,000 mile car. It was a 24,000 mile car.
Oh, wow. I'm about to give us $5 back.
It was a low odometer car, and obviously that's what I go for. But I put that car out in the market, and I could hear crickets. Now, if somebody, like there's a guy, I don't really know him personally, but I know there's another guy in New Hampshire that deals with Fox body Mustangs or 80s and 90s Camaros. If he had that car, he could market it, probably get more money for the car, and reach a bigger audience. I'm a one-man show, so my flower can only bloom so big before I have to hire more people to do what I do. Again, probably another reason why I have my blinders on to keep my market small. But eventually, I'm gonna have to get bigger for sure.
Well, I feel like the show's slowly turning into we gotta give Big Al a shout out around every corner. So I guess I'll dip into the front wheel drive scene in that same era you're talking about. I mean, growing up for me, it seemed like my parents could not get out of the buying a Oldsmobile Delta 88 like
88,
three
yeah.
times over. And I think, when we bought my aunt's old Delta 98, I was like, hey, at least we changed a digit, but they were all 1988 Delta 88s, and it just never seemed to get out of that. But I think I relate a lot to what you were talking about earlier, Anthony, and like you found this market. It's a niche market, but you're finding like the best kept ones, and some of that has to do with the demographic who historically buys the car.
Sure.
And I mean, that's exactly what I was looking for that's why I love my Fairmont. It's because, yeah, over the course of time, nobody's really hot rodded that thing. It just so happens to share all the parts with a Fox body Mustang because it's a Fox body. So it's easy to find used performance parts. And, so I always loved that. I've subscribed to CarCraft early 2000s. So I was always had this affinity for like entry level, like just go find you something in good shape. So you don't have to worry about doing paint and body. And then you can have fun doing all the other stuff, and so the car is always going to look good. So I guess tell me what's maybe one of your favorite, mod stories from your collection of this era of, Lincolns and Cadillacs.
Modification to the car.
Yeah.
I guess I probably can't chime in too well on that because I'm more of a purist. I prefer them just how GM designed them. When it comes to wheels and tires, when it comes to how they sound. In high school, I had a few. I had a Lincoln Mark 6. Lincoln Mark 7 in high school, an LSC Mark 7, and I think that was like my get it out of my system to kind of go fast, but I was still driving a Lincoln. Kind of going back to the Fox body, Mustang comparison. That was, everybody call it the Cobra Lincoln or whatever, but I liked it, but I didn't like it. I don't know. I would prefer bigger and more comfortable and slower. I don't care how slow it is. I got a Cadillac with an HT 4100 outside. That doesn't bother me. So as far as modifications, I really don't get into that. There's a lot of these cars that go into different modification groups. You know, you got your lowrider guys who love these Cadillacs and the big body Fleetwoods and Caprices. You got your donk guys. You got your guys down in Houston that put those big swagger wheels on them. So the culture for these cars, especially these Bromes, the Cadillacs, the Oldsmobiles, the Regency 98s, there's a lot of culture out there for the modification. I just prefer it as bone stock as I can possibly get it.
One thing that talking to somebody, who was it? I can't remember who it was. We were talking about modifications and how we wanted to just make it just a little bit better than maybe it came from the factory. And one thing that always resonated with me, and of course I didn't listen to him. If you watch my channel, you know that I didn't listen to this guy. But one of the things he says, the further away from stock you go, the less reliable of a vehicle you have. And there's truth to that, because you go and you want to add something in there, with regards to timing or suspension or whatever. All of a sudden you've got yourself something that doesn't work the way the factory had intended it. Gives you all that much more reason to doubt its reliability.
Sure.
So yeah, I agree with you with what you say, to keep it stock. All the engineering in the world, the high paid engineers went into this car to make it ride as good as it did, to make it steer as good as, or as bad. I mean, depending on the car you're driving, and to make it comfortable. And look, we're getting all kinds of super chats in here. Big Al in there, another $5. Thanks, Big Al. Really appreciate it. We've also got Sergio in there, talking about your passion and your knowledge of what you do. So one of the things that we want to try and steer a little bit towards the YouTube side, it may be a little less than your actual business, but obviously you're doing YouTube to showcase. You said you did it to showcase your inventory, which has now turned into an anticipation for a lot of people to see what the next big, pardon the pun, what the next big thing is coming on your channel. So how did you end up getting into, I shouldn't say how'd you get into YouTube, you already said that, but how did you get into pushing YouTube as that main source to showcase and to kind of get your name out there?
So it wasn't planned for me to become a YouTuber. It was by accident, and like I said to you before, it was really just to showcase my cars in video, to have it as a platform. And that's why my channel name is my name and not Specialty Motor Cars, because I didn't even think of making it to be something. But when I saw it turn was as I kept posting a video and putting a link in to my eBay auctions or my website whenever I was listing a car, I saw that subscriber number tick up and tick up and tick up. And then I found out, hey, you can get monetized on YouTube. And I'm like, okay, well, geez, what kind of a score is that? I'm now showcasing my cars for free, and I'm going to make a little bit of money. So that, that kind of projected me to earlier this year saying, well, maybe I should add a little bit more into it, not just showcase my cars, add some adventures with my father and I when we go pick up cars and things that happen on the road, and showcase a car that just came off the truck. Because what I've noticed on other YouTubers' channels is everybody likes to see behind the scenes. When I take this Cadillac, this red Cadillac next to me, and show you the final product, it's great. Everybody is in love with it, but how did I get that car? Where did it come from? And I have a video of this car that my father and I were in Pennsylvania buying a Lincoln. On our way home, and we abandoned that town car on the side of the highway and drove to Ohio to buy this Cadillac. So, that kind of shows a little bit more content. So I guess I'm trying to play both sides of that, showcasing the cars, a little bit of the behind the scenes. I'm starting to do how-to videos on things that I do to these cars that I do in my mind. I can do it with my eyes closed. And obviously that market of people that follow me, that niche market, they have the same cars, whether they buy it from me or they buy it from someone else. So they want to know how I do the normal things I do. And that I'm hoping kind of starts to generate a little bit more interest and expand out. The way I see it is it's a win-win. It connects me to my buyers, my fans. About a year and a half ago, when I started like really getting into like actually editing my videos and putting a lot more effort into them, which I still don't put a ton, but I do my best. It was like clockwork. I would list a car live on YouTube at 1:02 p.m. and by 1:10 my phone would ring. There's the first call. It would blow me away how now literally my business revolved around YouTube. People would wait and say, when's the next car coming up? And as soon as it hit, if they were interested in that car, they'd watch the video and my phone would ring. And it's turned into a really good platform for me. Where do I see it going in the future? I don't know. Like I said, I'm going to continue showcasing. I'm going to try to get more behind the scenes stuff so I can get kind of both sides of the content spectrum.
So earlier, Big Al had asked, he left a super chat, kind of, throwing his staking his claim the North Star is greater than 350. I'm pretty sure he meant the 350 Oldsmobile diesel is what he meant. Yeah. I'm pretty sure what he was. He didn't specify, so I'm filling the blanks there.
That's what I assumed.
Yeah,
that's what I assumed.
Which I think we would all agree. So, Dumb Broke Garage had slipped in the question too, which I think folds in nicely to where I wanted to go. Was earlier Anthony talked about how you had the Cadillac Cimarron, and he's like, "Yeah, man, is this too weird?" But I worked in historic preservation for a while, and over time, kind of came to the conclusion like, you know what, it's our responsibility too to save like some of the bad examples, because it's like you still got to tell the story, right? Like nobody's going to believe you how bad the cars in the 80s were if they're all gone, right? Yeah. So I mean, I think that's kind of where we come in. But Dumbo Garage had asked, what do you think the rarest Cadillac is that you've ever owned?
I mean, there's a lot of different ways to register the word rare, production number wise, option wise, sticking to my go-to, these 90 to 92 Bromes. When to me it comes to rare, the word rare or hard to find or unicorn, it brings me back to January of this year. I had a 1992 Brome. It was a black version of these cars. Black car, black top, black interior, the D Elegance package, which was a top trim package for what they were, and it was just loaded, soup to nuts. To me, that's rare. To have all the options, to have the right color combination, and to have all that crammed into one car, that's rare. So that, as far as memorable cars, that's probably, as far as Cadillacs and what I deal with, rare to find. That sticks to me. A few years ago, I had a Pontiac Parisian. Now that car is rare on a totally different level because most people don't even know what a Pontiac Parisian was. And I remember when I had that car, I had trouble selling it, but it's basically like a box Caprice from the 80s. It was an 86 Parisian. The nicest Pontiac Parisian in existence. Black vinyl top. It was the Brome package, loaded, local one-owner car. That car was rare because go find another Pontiac Parisian, especially when that was that clean. So, in car guy term, I look at rare a couple different ways. Rare to find, and then rare to see in a package like that Cadillac. Those to me are two rare cars that I'll probably never see again. I'll probably never have one loaded like that, and I'll probably never have a Pontiac Parisian again. I mean, even your Boss Caprices are getting quote unquote rare. You just can't find them anymore.
Well, it's funny because one of the things that Grant and I are always kind of poking at each other is our terminology and how we pronounce certain names and certain words. And of course, you just said what do you call it? A Parisian?
Yeah, I'm curious to see how you're going to say it, Jason.
Well, in Canada, we call them Parisienne.
Yeah.
Kind of the French take on that name. And I had only assumed that maybe those were only a Canadian car. Anyway, I guess they weren't, right?
Well,
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, if you want the middle of the country, maybe got a little too much sun on your neck version, Parisienne is what we down here in Kansas would have called it. In fact, before the Delta 88s, my mom and dad bought Grandpa and Grandma's box Parisienne, and the only tornado I've really actually been that close to, the Parisienne was out in the restaurant parking lot, and all of the windows got knocked out of it except for the back window and even the windshield. I remember driving home. We had to drive home from this restaurant after this tornado passed through with no windshield, and we had like a blanket covering all the shattered glass over the seats. So anyway, sorry, I kind of hijacked that one. Take it away, Jason or Anthony. I'm sorry.
No, we were knocked all the time with my pronunciation. Like the town cars, I call it. The top trim package for me is the Cartier, and I know I pronounce it wrong because everybody lights up my comment section. It's Cartier, and I don't know. That's how it rolls off my tongue. I'm from Boston. I don't pronounce my R's, so go figure.
So in Canada, there's two ways to do that. So if you're elegant and you're French, yeah, Cartier is how you would say that. But if you're redneck French, you call it Cartier.
Yeah.
Anyways, we could do this game all night long, boys. I did see the counter get up to 95, so 95 does tie the views or the entertainment.
The record
is what I'm trying to say here for the show. So thank you again, guys, for being a part of this and bringing all this interest to the channel. And I think we can coin the king of Cadillac is what I did when I made the thumbnail. We think we can nail that one down and coin that phrase for Anthony because I think it suits him very well. If you guys have questions for Anthony, go ahead now and leave them in the chat. We're not going to get to them all. We're going to try and get to 5 or 6 of them maybe, and hopefully if it delivers some great content and conversation, we'll keep going with it. So be sure to enter those questions in there. And I think I did see one way back here. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to find it right quick, but anyways, while I'm doing that, Grant, you got another question for Anthony?
Well, I did just want to go back to the Parisienne. However, there's 8 different ways to pronounce it. I guess we decided. I was racking my brain, and I'm glad you brought it up, Anthony, because I was racking my brain earlier. I'm a sucker for. I'm the resident Ford guy on the show, but I do have like a soft spot in my heart for. I tend to like Buick and Oldsmobile products, so it's like, yeah, Pontiac definitely didn't make anything like that. So I'm glad you brought that up because I kind of, I glossed over like, wait a second, my parents had one of those, so. And then, I always shuffle Cadillac over into this other category. So I guess, what's your favorite out of the BOP, the Buick Oldsmobile Pontiac lineup, kind of in this genre?
I would probably be a Buick guy. Your Roadmasters, your 80s LeSabres rear wheel drive before they went to front wheel drive. Those cars, I've had both examples. I actually have in my collection an 89 Buick Electra wagon and a 96 Roadmaster wagon. I guess that would be my next set. Pontiac would probably be down on the bottom because, like you said, how many Pontiacs were made like these Cadillacs or on this platform? And then, as far as I can think off the top of my head, it was only the Parisian. Oldsmobile, they had the Regencies, 98s, just the Brougham versions. They had different trim packages. They had the Delta 88s, which were all kind of on that big rear wheel drive platform. But Buick, I think, is my next, in that GM lineup.
So I did find that question that I was looking for, and it comes from Aaron Schwab, wondering, where does he sign up to be your Middle East sales rep?
You know what? I guess I don't know. I never had a sales rep. I have sold cars, plenty of cars overseas. These Bromes are big to go over to the Middle East. The town cars, not as much, but I sell them over there. But going back to the Parisian, the Buick LeSabre and Roadmasters, those are really big to go overseas. The biggest that I see are these Bromes, 1992 Bromes, and your Caprices, your box Caprices. Those cars were hot to export when they were new, and they're just as hot to export now. Every one of them almost goes over there. It's insane.
So another question comes in from Everything is Broken Garage, who is a YouTuber up in Newfoundland, and he's saying, living in the Rust Belt, is it hard to find product? Do you have to go far outside of your area to find cars?
Surprisingly not. I actually like buying cars around my area. Any car like these, 80s and 90s cars that still survive today are products of grandmas who never drove in the winter and cherish their cars, and or they belong to snowbirds who went to Florida and they sat in garages up here. The reason I prefer to buy around here is because they're well preserved from the heat. You go down to Florida, where everybody thinks Florida is the best place to buy one. The problem with Florida is it's so humid and so hot down there. It destroys the interiors, it destroys the vinyl tops, the plastics, the filler panels. Up here, I don't see that. This red Brome right behind me has 26,000 miles of Ohio life. It was not a Southern car, but you put it on the lift, it's clean as a whistle underneath. It was something that someone took so much pride in that they kept it in such nice shape. So I do see a lot of them in this area.
Classic car fans asking, what's your favorite year of town car? And I think I know this one because I think it's sitting right behind you.
It is sitting right behind me. The 95, 96, 97 town car, I absolutely love it. First car that I had on the road, like to drive, was a 96 town car. First car that I ever bought in my entire life was an 86 town car. But I got Cadillac signs on my wall. The first Cadillac I ever had was a Brome, but I always go back to those mid-90s town cars. I just think they were the best of everything. Best of style, modern, so to speak, and just the ride of them are super.
Another question coming from A. Michael Stevens. Anthony, why don't you hire some people to help prepare your cars? I assume that you and your dad do just about everything to these cars.
I do. I try to keep it small because one of the things I don't want to live with is worrying about paying an employee's, I don't want someone else to rely on me to make a living. I can live comfortably. My father, he's semi-retired. Like I say to everybody, he's my highest unpaid employee I have here. I have started subletting my work out. I keep going back to this red Cadillac. I just had this detailed by actually one of my YouTube followers. A local kid approached me and said, hey, can I help you, prepare these cars for sale? It was hard for me to let go because I take so much pride in it. But he spent 12 hours paint correcting, ceramic coating, and this car looks better than I'd ever make it look. So this car kind of won me over to say, okay, I can let go. I can sublet. I can let the guy up the street, the repair shop, do my brakes and tires. I can let, this guy do my detailing. Ultimately, that's what I have to do, just to get a little bit more efficient at what I do.
Jason, I'll let you hunt for maybe one of the top last remaining questions to throw out there. But Anthony, I wanted to piggyback on what you just talked about there, that someone, one of your followers found you and sort of offered their services to detail the red car behind you. So I guess that's a good that's a good jumping off point for one of the things we always like to ask our guests. What would you say out of your YouTube journey maybe is either something you wished you would have known sooner, or maybe is most rewarding from it? Like, think about your YouTube career as a whole, and maybe what is some advice maybe you could give to those in the chat aspiring to grow a channel to your size.
I came at it in an unprofessional manner. I did it on my phone. I didn't know how to edit videos, and I didn't think it was important to do so. I remember my first year of doing videos, I would film it on my phone and never cut it. Like, if I said something wrong, I didn't know how to edit it, so I would start all over again. Looking at it now, I wish I started off doing a little bit more research to know how I can come across more professionally. But again, like I said, when I started, I wasn't doing this to be a YouTuber. But knowing what the reward is from it and grabbing attention literally all over the world for what I do, I wish I did become a little bit more professional a little sooner and invest in, microphones and tripods and editing software and stuff like that, because that really does set you apart from the next guy. It shows as an amateur level if you put amateur work into it. That would be my number one thing.
So we've officially crested the 3 digits. We're at 101 viewers on the show, guys. Thank you so much. Anthony, consider yourself the reason this happened tonight, I guess, because, we talked about it before we went live. Sometimes it's a small channel, sometimes it's a big channel. We're all small channels here. And, we hit that 101 viewers tonight. That's great. That's awesome. Our resident Dodge guy, who is always in the chat, Luke from Coastal Auto Reaction, did ask, do you sell any Chrysler products? And I'm sure he's referring to luxury Chrysler products, because there were a few of them back in the 80s.
Sure. My only memory of having a Chrysler product as far as luxury, I had a I forget if it was an 87 era. It was a Chrysler Fifth Avenue, New Yorker Fifth Avenue. And it was the first one I ever got. I took it in on trade from a guy who traded it in for a Ford Crown Victoria. Long and short of it was, I was so excited to get it. Plump, overstuffed luxury seats, chrome everywhere. I thought it was, just beautiful. And I drove it, and I'm like, wow, this just doesn't do it for me. And you know what? I don't know if that one Chrysler left a bad taste in my mouth, but I never warmed up to it. And then going back to that Parisian, aside from a Fifth Avenue in the 80s or New Yorker, you go into the 90s and they're all front-wheel drive. Your LHSs, even your New Yorkers, your Imperials are front-wheel drive. And I don't get into that market too much. So no, I unfortunately, I don't get into a lot of Chrysler products. Nothing against Chrysler, but just the variety of what I like isn't there for Chrysler.
I'm trying to think how long you have to wait. Is 2004 maybe when the 300 came back, on the Charger platform? Is 2004 maybe? Maybe that's your next opportunity as, the 90s cars get a little older. Maybe you start thinking cresting the century mark there.
And that's everybody asks me, what happens when these cars dry up? Where are you going to go next? Thankfully, they made town cars and Grand Marquis and Crown Vics up till 2011. Your Buick Lucernes, your Cadillac DTSs, I like those. I don't get too much into them. Again, front-wheel drive, but if I find a nice, clean one, I'll definitely be all over those. But I don't know. I don't know where it's going to take me. 10 years from now, 15 years from now, who knows?
That's the thing with those Fifth Avenues. Now, I can remember my dad was always a Olds 98. We had 2 of them, the 2-door versions, and then he went to a LeSabre. So they were always into those rear-wheel drive cars too. But he did always think in the back of his mind that he wanted a Chrysler Fifth Avenue. But basically, you take a Dodge Diplomat, and you make it look fancy, and you don't change anything else, you're going to get a Dodge Diplomat. That's
exactly the impression that I got, because I drove it and I was very unimpressed.
Well, and don't get me wrong, I am a Dodge guy, I guess. I kind of do like the Dodge products. And, I think that the Diplomats and the Fifth Avenues, they were great cars, but there were no Cadillacs. We always say, oh, it rides like a Cadillac if you're talking about anything, right? The Cadillac has set that bar so high, even from their cars from the 50s, that they were just so much further above anything else in that market. So it's really tough to go and hop into somebody else's luxury and try and say, yeah, it's okay, because it really is. It's just okay in most cases. But go ahead, Vijay.
I just wanted to say, when you're talking Dodge Diplomat, just want to crawl inside my brain for a bit. One of my odd body dream weird obsessions, I think would maybe kill on YouTube, Hellcat Diplomat. Doesn't that kind of have a ring to it?
Yeah.
It's a Hellcat Diplomat Brome.
Oh,
I gotta have just a little bit of Brome in it.
Yeah, there you go. Or Broham, as they like to call it down south. We're really getting to the point. We're at the 45-minute mark, so we're going to close things off here very quickly. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to go around the clock here and talk about something that is coming up on our channel. So, Anthony, tell us a little bit of a sneak peek of a video or two that you might have coming out.
I have a few ideas of a few series that I'm going to make. One of them is going to be a resurrection series, or as my friend Tyler Hoover from Hoovy's Garage says, a Hoopty Rescue Mission series. That I think is going to be exciting for me. It's going to be one of these Bromes, and it's taking a clapped out version and making it stand as tall as I can. And I'm excited to do that and make a series out of it to show people what a little bit of effort can do to one of these cars.
And I just wanted to bring a little bit of attention to Nick Panaritis, who was in the chat, who is the kind of the host of Nick's Garage on YouTube. Says he's got a 72 Chrysler New Yorker coming to the shop for a small repair. And if I can guess, the car is likely going to be in fairly mint condition, because he gets a lot of that type of stuff up there as well. Grant, straight six fan. What do we got coming up here, carburetor-wise? I mean, YouTube-wise.
Yeah. So it's kind of like when Anthony said, he gets asked the question all the time, what happens when the cars dry up? Where's he going to go next? And who can predict 10 years out? Well, I really can't even predict 2 days out here, or 3 days out, because I normally film on Sunday. I don't really know. There probably will be carburetor footage for sure. I really want to get the Fairmont just running again in something super nice weather now, this time of year. So to go on just the random Saturday, Sunday cruises. So that's the motivation there. But I also need to be able to pull it out of the garage so I can get back to the Rat Rod Radio Flyer. Is going to be making a comeback on my channel for probably this fall. So that's kind of a peek behind the curtains. So what about yourself, Jason?
Well, we've been trying to get the Yugo situated with its little cooling issue. Found out what the problem was with that, so we've got a little thermal switch for the fan. Junior and I had it out the other night, trying our very darndest to make that thing do a burnout. And look, guys, with 57 horsepower and already being half wore out as it rolls off the assembly line, I'm not sure that we hold much hope for the Yugo doing a burnout, but we're going to make it happen one way or the other. If I have to put it in drive and drag it, put it in first gear and drag it backwards, I guess is what we may end up having to do. But it's going to happen. So that's the next video. I don't know when it's coming out. I do have a YouTube short coming out tomorrow with a little bit of an update. So hopefully you guys will catch that as well. Man, Anthony, I had a great time tonight.
That was great. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah. So one of the things too is if the border ever opens back up again for Canadians to be able to cross freely, I definitely want to get down and check out your inventory. Maybe we can collab somehow and put something together, because you're really only about 4.5-5 hours away from me. So it's just less than a day's drive. We can go down and do something. I think it's great. I really appreciate you taking the time out. Bringing the crowd with you like you did, because I see there's a lot of new names in there, and I hopefully, Big Al hasn't reached his credit limit yet. I see another one coming in there. on his credit card. I'm sure there's probably at least $30 or $40 in there tonight from Big Al, and I really appreciate that. Because that's what these live shows are all about. It's about showing support, not by necessarily just by viewing, but by interacting and being a part of the chat, asking questions, and super chats and super stickers. Because we've got projects. This is how we fund them sometimes, is with these little donations like you guys are giving out tonight. If you're not subscribed to Anthony's channel, I'm going to throw the link in the chat so you guys can head over there and make sure you check out what he's got. If you're not subscribed to Straight Six Fan, Grant's channel, again, head on over there. The links are in the description below, and I encourage you guys to check it out. If you're not subscribed to me yet, please go ahead and do that too, because I wouldn't want to leave myself shorthanded. We've all got goals. We've all got aspirations in life, and I'm living mine already. And it has nothing to do with YouTube. It's being self-employed. It's being in the car business. It's working with my dad every day. And Anthony, I know that you feel the same way. Doing the same thing. We talked about it before. The older we get, the less time we're apt to spend with our folks. We're fortunate enough to be able to do it daily. Grant, I know that you have folks that are close by, and one of the stories that you tell is about having the old farm trucks or the old work trucks around the farm and stuff like that, and having that connection to your folks as well. I hope that someday you get to do your dream of being able to create and work on products as well, whether it be cars or whatever it is that's going to pull you in and hone you in on some skills, because that's what we're all about. We're all trying to learn every day. Anthony's got his, Grant's got yours, I've got mine. We're trying to make everybody think that it's real important stuff, so they'll watch it on YouTube too. So that's all I got. Thank you guys. Thanks everybody in the chat for being here tonight. We're still showing 96 people over there. It's great. I'm really happy. I'm doing a lot of talking. I'm going to shut up now, but thanks again. Grant, why don't you take us home?
Well, just quick reminder. So if this is your first time at the Car Guy and Six Fan Show, which I believe it is for a lot of people, if we're setting attendance records, Jason and I, it's a joint collaboration. So we bounce back and forth every other week. So I will be hosting next week, and we have scheduled Waylon Wire as our guest. So if you don't know who Waylon Wire is, Olkin, he's a rat rod builder from the Pacific Northwest, and he's a hoot, and he does a lot of good work. So I suspect it's going to be a good show next week as well. I guess Anthony, I just wanted to say thanks for spending a little bit of your Thursday with us. And I guess if I want to try to draw some sort of conclusions or summarize the night tonight, I guess the one thing I learned with all of Big Al's super chats and his love for front wheel drive cars, Jason, I think what you're obligated to do now, since you've been wrestling with what do you motor swap that you go with, I think it's got to be either a Pontiac or a Buick Regal 38 supercharged 3800. I think is probably what you owe it to Big Al to swap in a front wheel drive 3800 with the supercharger on it.
Big Al would be proud of that one.
Oh, Big Al's going to be so disappointed. Oh, you'll just have to wait and see. You never know. I've got my heart set on something, and I just haven't found it yet. So we've got an awful small space to work with, guys. Just keep that in mind.
Well, otherwise, I guess that's going to do it for this installment of the Car Guy and Six Fan Show. Thanks again for everybody in attendance. So I guess we'll close it out like I normally do all my other videos. To all my Six fans out there, thanks for watching.